holder, and welcome to the channel. Today we're going to take a look at three different 800 horsepower big block Chevy combos, starting off with a low compression 540 Dart SHP short block. Now, not only did this combination have less than 9-to-1 compression, meaning the static compression was in the 8s, it made over 800 horsepower. But in addition to showing you that combination, I'm also going to show you the test we ran on three different style tunnel rams. Now, stepping over to our next combination, let's take a look at how we take a 496 buildup, a good solid 496, and then make it a great motor by adding a little bit of nitrous. The final combination, we're introducing Boost. That's a 454-inch ZZ 454 crate motor from GM Performance with a Procharger. What do you think? Let's check it out. Okay guys, we're going to jump right into our 800 horsepower big block combinations, and we started off with a naturally aspirated version, and then we'll jump into some other combinations. Our naturally aspirated version started off at 540 cubic inches. In fact, it started off as a Dart SHP short block, forged crank, forged rods, forged pistons, and obviously the Dart block. We're running a set of flat top pistons on this combination with valve reliefs to run much more cam timing, but the flat top piston combined with the 120cc chamber in our Dart Pro 1 CNC ported 335 heads produced a static compression ratio of less than 9-to-1, so about 8.75 to 8.8 to 1, depending on what head gasket and stuff that we use. But fairly low compression. Despite that, we ran a fairly healthy sized solid roller camshaft in this, and this is a common misconception that you can't run these big cams with low compression. You can. They work better with more compression because compression basically adds power everywhere, but you can still work them fairly well, as we showed in this combination. So the camshaft that we run was a 4.7 swap big block Chevy camshaft. Just happened to have one that we had it laying around basically at West Tech. It was a 742/715 lift split, a 271/280 degree duration split at 112 degree lobe separation angle. And as I said, we installed the Dart Pro 1 335 CNC heads. We had we started off, this was a comparison of tunnel rams that we did. So we started off with a Wyand rec port tunnel ram with two 750 carburetors on it. And then we actually stepped up to a Dart tunnel ram with two dominators, and then we stepped up even more to a Wilson ported Dart tunnel ram. And so we'll show the combination of all of those. We ran a crank trigger that allowed us to get away from having to use the distributor on the tunnel ram setup, and that worked out really well. We had roller rockers on this. We ran our big 2¼ inch dyno headers that we run on everything. So run with the Wyand tunnel ram and the two Holley 4150 carburetors on this. This combination produced actually less than 700 horsepower, 777 horsepower, and 681 foot-pounds. And here's what would happen when we replaced the Wyand tunnel ram and the two 750s with a Dart tunnel ram and two 1050 dominators, because, if you're going to have a tunnel ram on there, you got to have two dominators on there on a big block, even a low compression one like this. But here's what happened when we installed the tunnel ram. So that pushed our power up over 800 horsepower. We were now making 806 horsepower, and peak torque was up to 695 foot-pounds. So it was doing very well, the Dart tunnel ram. You can see there's a little bit of trade-off going on as our sine wave is working there, but basically from 5,000 on out, the bigger tunnel ram and the two 1050s worked out better. And then what we did was we took that same intake manifold, that same Dart tunnel ram, sent it over to the guys at Wilson, and they did porting on it. And here's what happened. We picked up even more power. That pushed power up to 833 horsepower, and peak torque was up to 712 horsepower. So you can see that there is room to be had, power to be had from porting the manifold, and we still had our same 1050 twin 1050 dominators, which was more than enough airflow to support this power level. So there you can see, even at less than 9-to-1, our 540-inch big block with tunnel rams on it made good power. Now let's check out combination number 2. Test motor number 2 was also a stroker, but not a 540-inch version, actually only a 496 using a Gen 5 block. So we started off with the Gen 5 block, and then we added a forged scat crank, and then a combination of bullet pistons and rods from CP and Carrillo. So that produced a forged rotating assembly that worked out very well. We topped that with a set of ProMax CNC ported 340 big block Chevy heads. We also had a much milder camshaft in this 496 than we ran in the 540. It was the Comp BR300-14, so it was a 652 lift. It was a solid roller, but a fairly mild one. It was a 255, 262 degree duration, and 114 degree load separation angle. Comp also supplied the double roller timing chain and the solid roller lifters that we use in this, as well as the push rods for this combination. This was a 4.31 by 4.25 stroke. We ran an Edelbrock Super Victor intake manifold designed for a 4500 carburetor. We installed a 1050 Dominator carburetor on this and ran an MSD distributor and our long tube headers, the Mazzero electric pump and all of that stuff. And run in this manner, this motor was about 10-to-1 static compression. This thing produced 676 horsepower, 677, and peak torque checked in at 590 foot-pounds, 589.7 to be correct. And so you might be wondering, well, how do you push this thing up over the 800 horsepower mark? Very easy. We just had a quick shot of nitrous, and here's what happened when we did that. So here's our nitrous hit, and as you can see, and as we have come to expect from nitrous in the past, when everything's right, when the tune is right and the bottle pressure is right, which we put our bottle in the Westech bottle heater and ran a simple 4500 plate system on this. And I'll go ahead and put the jetting up, but when everything was optimized with the timing and the jetting and the air fuel and all that stuff, and so what we did was push peak power up to 859 horsepower. And peak torque on the spike was 769 foot-pounds. You can see we activated this about 5,000 RPM when we got our hit, a good hit at like 5,500 or so. But you can see nice railroad tracks on the power output for the nitrous. So as long as the nitrous was engaged, we still had this consistent power gain. And that's kind of the nice thing of nitrous. We could run this, we could add the nitrous or hit the button earlier in this RPM range. You certainly could do that out on the track. Some guys are hitting it right off the line, but you can see big gains from nitrous, and the easy way to make your 670 or 680 horsepower combination into an 800 plus combination, in this case over 850, add a little nitrous. Let's get to combination number 3. Our final 800 horsepower combination, naturally we had to introduce boost. So we started off with actually something very simple, something that's very easy to reproduce. It's basically a ZZ454 crate motor available from GM. Now that combination came with it's a 9.6-to-1 static compression ratio, so not a ton of compression, but enough to make reasonable power. It had GM aluminum oval port heads, 110 cc's. We topped it with a Wyand Track Warrior intake manifold and a 950 Holley, an MSD distributor. We had our Mazzero electric pump, and then the 2¼ inch long tube headers. We also took the liberty of removing the pan so that we could drop the pan and weld on a bung so that we could have our drain for our supercharger system, because we were going to add a Procharger a D1X, and we also ran a P1X on this with an air-to-water intercooler to push the power output of the naturally aspirated combination all the way up, plus the, beyond the 800 horsepower mark. We installed the camshaft run in this thing was a Comp Extreme Energy. It was a 521, 540 lift split, a 236, 242 degree duration split, and 110 degree lobe separation angle. When we ran this thing in naturally aspirated trim before adding the supercharger, we ran it with a 950 Holley, and it produced 538 horsepower and 518 foot-pounds of torque. But here's what happened when we installed the Procharger. This one was with a D1X Procharger centrifugal supercharger. We also added a radius entry. I'll show you a photo up here. A radius entry feeding the blower to improve the airflow. We had a 4-inch blower pulley on it and a 7.5-inch crank pulley on this. And we also installed the air-to-water intercooler. We swapped out the 950 Holley HP carburetor and installed the carburetor that we run on most of these blow-through applications. This was a CSU 850 blow-through carburetor for the guys that are interested and want to try starting their setup at some combination. We had this set up with a 78-83 jet split front to back, and we had a half turn out on both of the boost reference power valves on the CSU carburetor, because that is adjustable on those carburetors. We were running 30 degrees of timing, and we ran a mixture of 91 and 100 just to make sure that we had enough, we had a safety margin. This particular motor had belonged to one of the editors of the magazine, so we wanted to make sure that nothing got hurt on it. That's why we put a little extra octane in there. So run with the Procharger, the intercooled Procharger blowing through the CSU carburetor. This pushed our power output up over the 800 mark to 818 horsepower. Peak torque was 728 foot-pounds. You can see the blower adds a ton of power. It produced a peak of 7.8 pounds of boost, so very low boost in actuality. You probably could run this thing on pump gas without any problem. Boost pressure started out at about 2.4 pounds, down near 3,000 RPM, and as I said, went up to a peak of 7.8 pounds on this combination. So there you go. Crate motor, decent cam, carburetor, good blower, and away you go. Let's get to our conclusion. Okay guys, what's the takeaway from this video on 800 horsepower big block Chevy combinations? Well, we learned the following thing. Even on a naturally aspirated 540-inch motor saddled with 8.7 to 5 to 1 compression, we can still easily exceed 800 horsepower with the right tunnel ram combination. It makes me wonder what this combination would have done instead of being less than 9 to 1 if we would have had 12 or 13 or even 14 to 1 compression. Now stepping over to nitrous is just kind of the great equalizer. We can take a really good 496 combination like we put together and make it a great combination with just the push of a button. Nitrous, always awesome. Now boost, definitely high on the list. In this case, a Procharger on a very kind of average and mundane ZZ454 crate motor. All we had to do was add the Procharger to it, and that took an average motor and made it extraordinary. I'm Richard Holder. Make sure to like, share, subscribe, ring the bell. And since we've already done 4 and 5 and 6 and 7 and 800 horsepower combinations, that means 900 horsepower inbound.